At Robertson's Luxury Motors, the morning sun gleamed off the polished hoods of high-end vehicles lined up in perfect rows. The dealership had been a cornerstone of the community for over 3 decades, but times were changing. Sales had been declining, and the aging owner had quietly put the business up for sale months ago. Behind the spotless glass doors, Mr. Thompson, the senior sales manager, stood tall in his perfectly pressed suit. He'd worked at the dealership for 20 years and prided himself on being able to spot a serious buyer from a window shopper. His perfectly combed gray hair and stern expression had become legendary among the staff for making quick judgments about customers. That Wednesday morning started like any other. The sales team huddled around their morning coffee, discussing their targets and sharing stories about recent sales. The cleanup crew had just finished their morning routine, ensuring every surface sparkled under the showroom lights. Around 10 a.m., a young man in worn jeans and a simple black t-shirt walked through the doors. His sneakers were scuffed, and his watch looked like it came from a department store. The receptionist barely glanced up from her computer as he wandered between the luxury vehicles, running his fingers along their smooth surfaces. Mr. Thompson watched from his office, frowning at what he considered inappropriate behavior. In his mind, someone touching the cars without permission was unacceptable, especially someone who clearly couldn't afford them. He straightened his tie and marched across the showroom floor. "Sir, please refrain from touching the vehicles," Mr. Thompson called out, his voice carrying the weight of authority he'd cultivated over years of dealing with window shoppers. "These are high-end automobiles, and we maintain certain standards here." The young man turned, a friendly smile on his face. "Oh, sorry about that. I'm just admiring the craftsmanship. The new GT model is absolutely stunning." Mr. Thompson's expression remained unchanged. "Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at one of our more economical competitors down the street. We specialize in luxury vehicles, and our starting prices might be outside your current budget." A few sales associates nearby exchanged uncomfortable glances. They'd seen this scene play out before, but something about this particular customer made them uneasy. Maybe it was his confident posture or the way his eyes seemed to take in every detail of the showroom with unusual interest. "Actually," the young man said, still smiling, "I'm very interested in several models. Would you mind showing me the new limited edition sports car you just got in? The blue one in the corner?" Mr. Thompson's patience was wearing thin. In his experience, people who couldn't afford luxury cars often asked to see the most expensive ones, just for the thrill. "That vehicle is priced at $285,000, sir. It requires serious inquiries only, and we have a strict policy about test drives." The young man nodded thoughtfully. "I understand. And what about the policy on treating all customers with respect, regardless of their appearance?" A subtle shift occurred in the atmosphere of the showroom. The cleaning staff paused their work, and the receptionist finally looked up from her computer screen. Mr. Thompson felt a slight tremor in his confidence but pressed on. "Sir, I've been in this business for 2 decades. I know our clientele, and I'm simply trying to save us both some time." The young man reached into his back pocket and pulled out his phone. After a few taps, he turned the screen toward Mr. Thompson. "Maybe this email will save us even more time. It's from your corporate office, confirming the purchase of Robertson's Luxury Motors by Tech Innovation Enterprises last week." Mr. Thompson's face paled slightly as he read the email. The young man continued, his voice remaining surprisingly kind, "I'm Andy Chen, CEO of Tech Innovation Enterprises. I like to visit our new acquisitions unannounced. It helps me understand the true customer experience." The silence in the showroom was deafening. The cleaning staff had completely stopped pretending to work, and the sales associates stood frozen, their coffee cups suspended midway to their mouths. "I believe," Andy continued, "we need to have a serious discussion about customer service and prejudgment. But first, I'd like to see that blue sports car. After all, I technically own it now." Mr. Thompson's world seemed to tilt on its axis. 20 years of experience hadn't prepared him for this moment. The man he'd been trying to shoo away wasn't just a customer, he was their new owner. The story of what happened that morning at Robertson's Luxury Motors spread through the local business community like wildfire. It served as a powerful reminder that success and worth couldn't be measured by appearances alone. Andy spent the rest of that day talking to every employee, from the salespeople to the maintenance staff. He listened to their ideas, their concerns, and their hopes for the dealership's future. His approach was surprisingly down-to-earth for someone who had just purchased a multi-million-dollar business. As the sun set that evening, casting long shadows across the showroom floor, Andy sat in his new office, the same one Mr. Thompson had watched him from earlier that day. He wasn't there to fire anyone or to make dramatic changes. Instead, he was drafting a new customer service policy, one that would ensure every person who walked through those doors would be treated with the same respect, regardless of what they wore or how they looked. The events of that day marked the beginning of a new era for Robertson's Luxury Motors, one where judgments would be left at the door, and every customer's dream of owning a luxury car would be taken seriously. As for Mr. Thompson, this humbling experience would teach him the most valuable lesson of his career, that sometimes the biggest opportunities come disguised in the most unexpected packages. The following morning at Robertson's Luxury Motors brought a different energy to the showroom. Word had spread quickly about the previous day's events, and the staff arrived early, unsure what changes their new owner might implement. Mr. Thompson, who had barely slept, adjusted his tie in his office mirror for the 5th time. Andy arrived wearing a crisp button-down shirt this time, though still paired with jeans. He carried a cardboard tray of coffee cups from a local cafe and greeted each employee by name, names he'd memorized from yesterday's conversations. This simple gesture didn't go unnoticed by the staff, who were used to more formal, distant leadership. "Good morning, everyone," Andy called out, setting the coffee tray on the reception desk. "Before we open today, I'd like to have a quick team meeting." His warm smile put most of the staff at ease, though Mr. Thompson still stood stiffly near the back of the gathering group. The morning sunlight streamed through the showroom windows as Andy perched casually on the hood of a mid-range luxury sedan, an action that made Mr. Thompson visibly wince. "Yesterday was interesting," Andy began, drawing a few nervous chuckles from the staff. "But today isn't about dwelling on what happened. It's about moving forward." He pulled out a tablet and started sharing statistics that surprised everyone. "Our online reviews show a pattern. We're great at serving customers who walk in wearing designer suits, but we've lost countless sales by misjudging others." A local tech entrepreneur wrote that she left without being served last month. A professional athlete felt dismissed because he came in after a workout. A retired business owner was directed to economy cars because of his casual dress. The sales team shifted uncomfortably, recognizing their own biases in these stories. Mr. Thompson stared at his shoes, his face reddening slightly. "But here's the exciting part," Andy continued, his eyes lighting up. "We're not just going to change our approach to customers. We're going to revolutionize the luxury car buying experience." He stood up and walked among the staff, making eye contact with each person. "Starting today, we're implementing what I call the blank slate policy. Every customer who walks through those doors gets the same VIP treatment." A young sales associate raised her hand hesitantly. "But Mr. Chen, how do we protect ourselves from time wasters? We work on commission, and our time is valuable." Andy nodded thoughtfully. "Good question. That's why we're also changing the commission structure. From now on, you'll receive a base pay increase, and commissions will be based on customer satisfaction scores as well as sales. We want you to focus on building relationships, not just closing deals." The staff began murmuring among themselves, a mix of excitement and uncertainty in their voices. This was a radical departure from the traditional luxury car sales model they were used to. "And Mr. Thompson," Andy called out, causing the senior sales manager to straighten up even more, if that was possible. "I'd like you to lead our new customer service training program." The surprise on Mr. Thompson's face was evident. He'd been expecting a demotion, or worse. "Sir, after yesterday, I don't understand." Andy walked over to him, speaking quietly enough that others had to lean in to hear. "Yesterday showed me exactly why you're perfect for this role. You've experienced firsthand how wrong first impressions can be. Your 20 years of experience isn't invalidated by one mistake, it's enhanced by learning from it." The tension in Mr. Thompson's shoulders released slightly, and for the first time in 2 days, a small smile crossed his face. "Thank you, sir. I won't let you down." As the meeting continued, Andy outlined more changes: a comfortable waiting area with premium coffee and snacks, a kids' play space designed by child development experts, and a state-of-the-art digital showroom where customers could visualize custom modifications to any vehicle. But the most significant change came in the form of a new welcome protocol. Instead of sizing up customers, staff would focus on getting to know them. "Every person has a story," Andy explained. "Our job is to become part of their story, not judge how their story looks from the outside." The morning meeting ran longer than planned, but nobody seemed to mind. As the staff dispersed to their positions, there was a newfound energy in the air. Even the skeptics among them couldn't deny that Andy's enthusiasm was contagious. Just before opening, Mr. Thompson approached Andy with a stack of papers. "Sir, these are all the sales records from the past year. I've highlighted the customers we may have misjudged. I thought perhaps we could reach out to them personally." Andy beamed at the initiative. "That's exactly the kind of thinking we need. You know what? Let's take it a step further. Plan an exclusive event for them, a VIP night where we can make things right." As the doors opened for business that day, Robertson's Luxury Motors felt like a different place. The same cars gleamed under the same lights, but the atmosphere had shifted. The staff stood ready not just to sell cars, but to welcome stories of success, of dreams, of hard work, and of defying expectations. Little did they know, their own story of transformation was about to become legendary in the luxury car industry, and it all started with a young owner in worn jeans who dared to challenge the status quo. The next few weeks at Robertson's Luxury Motors brought changes that no one could have predicted. The story of the undercover boss had somehow leaked to social media, and suddenly the dealership was getting attention from unexpected places. Local news outlets picked up the story, and their phones started ringing with inquiries from people who'd never dared to step foot in a luxury car dealership before. One particular Thursday afternoon proved just how much things had changed. A food truck driver pulled into the lot, his work uniform stained with the day's specials. In the old days, he might have been politely but firmly turned away. Instead, Lisa, one of the senior sales associates, greeted him with the same warmth she'd show any customer. "Welcome to Robertson's. I'm Lisa. Can I offer you some coffee while we chat about what brings you in today?" She gestured toward their new coffee bar, complete with freshly baked pastries from a local bakery. The man, who introduced himself as Ray, seemed surprised by the welcome. "Actually, I've been saving up for 5 years," he said, pulling out his phone to show her his investment portfolio. "I run 3 food trucks now, and I figured it's time to reward myself with something special." Lisa spent the next hour with Ray, learning about his journey from a single borrowed truck to a successful small business owner. By the end of the day, Ray had purchased one of their premium sedans, and his story became another testament to Andy's new vision. Mr. Thompson, meanwhile, was throwing himself into his new role with unexpected enthusiasm. He'd transformed the dealership's old storage room into a training center, complete with role-playing scenarios and video feedback sessions. The walls were covered with customer testimonials, both positive and negative, serving as constant reminders of the impact their attitudes could have. Remember, he'd tell his trainees, often sharing his own humbling experience. Behind every pair of worn jeans might be the next big success story. Our job isn't to judge their chapter 1, it's to be part of their next chapter. The digital showroom Andy had promised was finally installed, and it became an instant hit. Customers could now use augmented reality to see any car in different colors, with various interior options, all while standing in the showroom. Children would spend hours in the new play area, designed to look like a miniature service station, complete with toy cars and child-sized mechanic uniforms. But perhaps the most significant change came from an unexpected source: the maintenance and cleaning staff. Andy had noticed they often had the most contact with customers, especially during vehicle services, yet they'd always been kept in the background. He implemented a new policy where every staff member, regardless of their role, received customer service training. One morning, Andy arrived to find the cleaning supervisor, Mrs. Patel, giving a customer a detailed explanation of how to maintain their new car's finish. The customer was so impressed with her knowledge that they specifically mentioned her in their review. You see, Andy told his management team during their weekly meeting, luxury isn't just about the products we sell. It's about how we make people feel. Every person who walks through those doors should feel like they belong here. The VIP event Mr. Thompson had suggested was scheduled for the following month. They sent personalized invitations to every customer who might have had a less than stellar experience in the past. The response was overwhelming, not just from those customers, but from their friends and family who'd heard about the dealership's transformation. The preparations for the event were in full swing when something unexpected happened. A rival luxury dealership from across town sent a mystery shopper, someone deliberately dressed down, to test if the rumors about Robertson's new approach were true. The young woman, wearing gym clothes and carrying a beaten-up backpack, spent 3 hours being treated like royalty before revealing her true purpose. Instead of being embarrassed about the test, Andy saw it as an opportunity. He invited the rival dealership's owner to lunch, sharing his vision for changing the entire industry's approach to customer service. Competition is good, he explained, but changing people's lives is better. The story of Robertson's transformation began appearing in business magazines and industry publications. What started as a local viral moment was becoming a case study in modern customer service and business transformation. Luxury car dealerships from other states began sending their staff to learn from Mr. Thompson's training program. But Andy made sure the success didn't change their fundamental approach. He still arrived early most mornings, helping the cleaning staff or chatting with customers in the waiting area. He kept his casual style, though he'd finally replaced his worn sneakers with another pair of sneakers, just slightly newer. One day, he overheard a new sales associate telling a customer, "You know, our owner could buy any car in this showroom, but he drives a 5-year-old hybrid. He says it's not about what you drive, it's about how you treat people along the way." That evening, as Andy sat in his office reviewing the month's numbers, which had broken all previous records, he noticed Mr. Thompson standing in the doorway, holding what looked like an old photograph. "Sir, I found this while cleaning out some old files," Mr. Thompson said, handing over the picture. It showed Robertson's luxury motors on its opening day, 30 years ago. The original owner stood proudly in front of the showroom, wearing overalls and a work shirt. Turns out the founder started as a mechanic who dreamed big. Somehow, we'd forgotten that along the way. Andy smiled, taking the photo and placing it in a prominent spot on his wall. "Well," he said, "I'd say we're back on track now. Every dream starts somewhere, right?" As the sun set over the showroom, casting long shadows across the polished floors, the photos served as a reminder that success stories don't always wear designer labels. Sometimes they show up in worn jeans, or food truck uniforms, or gym clothes, but they always deserve a chance to be heard. The success at Robertson's Luxury Motors was impossible to ignore, but with growth came new challenges. As fall approached, Andy noticed that their service department was becoming overwhelmed with appointments. Their reputation for treating everyone like VIPs had spread so widely that people were driving from neighboring states just to have their vehicles serviced at Robertson's. One rainy Tuesday morning, a tow truck pulled up with a mud-covered luxury SUV. The owner, a farmer in mud-stained boots, had driven 3 hours after hearing about Robertson's from a friend. His vehicle had broken down halfway to the dealership, but he'd insisted on having it towed the rest of the way. "I've never been treated right at any dealership," he explained to the service manager. "My hands are always dirty from work, and people assume I can't afford the service. But I own one of the largest organic farms in the state." The service department was already backed up, but Andy, who happened to be walking by, heard the conversation. He immediately grabbed an umbrella and walked out to greet the farmer personally. "Let's get you some coffee and see what we can do," he said, leading him inside. "And I'd love to hear more about organic farming while our team looks at your vehicle." This interaction sparked an idea. During the next management meeting, Andy proposed something revolutionary, a complete redesign of their service department. "We're not just selling cars," he explained, pulling up a presentation on his tablet. "We're selling an experience that should last for years after the purchase." The plan was ambitious. They would convert their unused warehouse space into a state-of-the-art service center, complete with a comfortable observation area where customers could watch their vehicles being worked on through large windows. The waiting area would feature private work pods for business people and a cafe serving local organic produce, sourced from their new friend, the farmer. Mr. Thompson, who had fully embraced his role as head of customer experience, suggested adding a shuttle service for customers who couldn't wait. "And not just any shuttle," he added. "Let's use our luxury vehicles as courtesy cars. Let them experience our products while they wait." The investment was substantial, but Andy saw it as essential. Every time someone brings their car in for service, it's an opportunity to reinforce why they chose us. And maybe convince them to choose us again in the future. Construction began immediately, and despite the dust and noise, the spirit in the dealership remained high. The staff had learned to turn every challenge into an opportunity. When customers complained about the construction noise, they were offered noise-canceling headphones branded with the Robertson's logo, an idea that came from one of the maintenance staff members. During this period, something unexpected happened. A young woman walked in, looking somewhat lost. She explained that she wasn't there to buy a car or for service, she was writing her thesis on business transformations and had heard about Robertson's story. Could she possibly interview some staff members? Andy not only agreed but invited her to set up a small desk in the showroom for a week, observing their operations firsthand. Her presence led to some fascinating insights. She noticed that customers spent an average of 45 minutes longer at Robertson's compared to other dealerships, not because of slow service, but because they felt comfortable enough to stay and chat. She also documented how the staff's language had changed. Instead of starting conversations with, "What can I sell you today?" they asked, "What brings you to Robertson's?" This subtle shift transformed every interaction from a transaction into a relationship. One afternoon, while shadowing the service department, she witnessed something that perfectly captured the dealership's transformation. A teenage girl had brought in her father's car for routine maintenance. When the staff discovered her father was in the hospital and she was handling his affairs, they not only serviced the car free of charge but also arranged to have it detailed as a surprise for when he recovered. The student's thesis eventually became a case study taught in business schools, focusing on how authentic customer care could transform not just a business, but an entire industry. She titled it, "The Robertson Revolution: How Worn Jeans Changed the Luxury Car Business." As the service center renovation neared completion, Andy organized a special preview evening for the staff and their families. The new facility gleamed under modern lighting, with tools organized like a surgical theater. The observation area featured comfortable seating and large screens showing detailed explanations of common car maintenance procedures. During the preview, one of the veteran mechanics pulled Andy aside. "You know," he said, gesturing to the spotless workspace, "I've been working on cars for 30 years, but this is the first time I've felt proud to let customers watch me work." The farmer who had inspired the service center transformation was invited as a special guest for the official opening. He arrived in his now pristine SUV, this time wearing a clean pair of boots, though he joked that his working boots had better stories to tell. Standing before the gathered crowd, Andy shared a story he hadn't told before. "When I was younger, my first car was an old station wagon that broke down constantly. Every time I took it for service, I was treated like a nuisance. I promised myself that if I ever had the chance, I'd create a place where everyone's vehicle problems were treated with equal importance, regardless of what they drove or wore." The new service center represented more than just an expansion, it was a physical manifestation of Robertson's new philosophy. Every detail, from the coffee bar serving the farmer's organic products to the children's viewing area where kids could watch cars being repaired, reinforced their commitment to treating everyone like family. As the evening wound down, Mr. Thompson found Andy sitting in one of the work pods, looking thoughtful. "Penny for your thoughts, sir." Andy smiled. "I was just thinking about that first day, when you tried to kick me out. Who would have thought it would lead to all this?" Mr. Thompson chuckled. "Well, sir, I'd say it led to exactly what this place needed, a reminder that luxury isn't about exclusion. It's about making everyone feel extraordinary." Winter arrived early that year, bringing unexpected challenges to Robertson's luxury motors. The first snowfall of the season coincided with their biggest sales event yet, but instead of dampening spirits, it sparked another innovative idea that would further cement the dealership's reputation. Early that morning, before the sun had risen, a young family arrived at the dealership in an old minivan that was barely holding together. The parents looked exhausted, having driven through the snowstorm with their 3 children. They hadn't planned to come to Robertson's that day, but their van had started making worrying noises on their way to visit relatives. The night security guard, who had recently completed Andy's customer service training, immediately invited them inside the warm showroom. He started the coffee maker and found some hot chocolate packets for the children in the break room supplies. When Andy arrived an hour later, he found the family settled comfortably in the waiting area, the children coloring with some paper and crayons the security guard had scrounged up. After hearing their situation, Andy made a decision that would spark yet another transformation at Robertson's. "We need to be more than just a luxury car dealership," he announced at the emergency staff meeting he called that morning. "We need to be a community resource." He quickly outlined his plan. During severe weather, they would open their facilities to stranded motorists, regardless of what they drove or where they bought their vehicles. Mr. Thompson, ever practical, raised his hand. "Sir, what about liability issues?" Andy smiled. "Already on it. Our legal team is drawing up the necessary paperwork as we speak. But more importantly, I want to create an emergency response team within our staff. Who's interested in getting certified in basic vehicle maintenance and first aid?" The response was overwhelming. Staff from every department volunteered, including the cafe workers and cleaning crew. The young family's experience had touched everyone, and they all wanted to help prevent similar situations. Within weeks, Robertson's had transformed its massive underground parking garage into an emergency shelter space that could be activated during severe weather. They installed cots, stocked emergency supplies, and even created a children's play area specifically for emergency situations. The local news caught wind of the initiative when a reporter found himself stranded during a particularly nasty storm. His feature story about spending the night at a luxury car dealership went viral, but not for the reasons anyone expected. It wasn't the emergency accommodations that captured people's attention, it was how the staff treated every stranded motorist like a VIP guest. One elderly couple, who had been rescued from their stalled economy car on the highway, couldn't stop talking about how the dealership's master mechanic had personally gone out in the storm to help them. "He fixed our car right there," they told the reporter, and refused to accept any payment. Said it was part of Robertson's community commitment. The story caught the attention of the state's emergency management agency. They reached out to Andy with a proposal. Would Robertson's be willing to serve as an official emergency shelter during severe weather events? The garage's capacity and the staff's new training made it an ideal location. Andy gathered his team to discuss the proposal. "This is bigger than selling cars," he said. "This is about using our resources to help our community. But I want everyone's input because it will affect all of us." The discussion that followed revealed just how much the staff had internalized Andy's philosophy of service. The sales team suggested creating emergency vehicle inspection events before major storms. The service department offered to hold free winter driving clinics. Even the cafe staff proposed partnering with local restaurants to ensure they could feed people during emergencies. Mr. Thompson, who had once been so focused on maintaining the dealership's exclusive image, was now one of the strongest advocates for community involvement. "You know," he said during the meeting, "luxury isn't just about leather seats and powerful engines. Sometimes it's just about being there when people need help." The transformation of Robertson's continued, but now it was about more than just changing how they sold cars. They were changing what a car dealership could be to its community. The showroom still gleamed with the latest luxury models, but it had also become a place where anyone could find help, regardless of what they drove. During that winter, Robertson's sheltered over 300 stranded motorists. Each person left with a story about how a luxury car dealership had treated them like family. Many came back later, not necessarily to buy cars, but to thank the staff or to volunteer during subsequent emergencies. One snowy evening, as Andy helped the staff set up cots for another group of stranded travelers, he found himself working alongside the security guard who had helped that first family. "You know," the guard said, "when you bought this place, we thought you were just going to change our sales approach. But you've changed how we see ourselves." Andy paused, looking around at the showroom where luxury vehicles shared space with emergency supplies and children's coloring books. "Sometimes," he replied, "the biggest luxury we can offer is simply being there for others." The security cameras that night captured an unusual scene, a luxury car showroom filled not with potential buyers, but with grateful people from all walks of life, sharing hot chocolate and swapping stories as the storm raged outside. Among them moved the Robertson staff, not selling cars but offering comfort, assistance, and that most luxury of all commodities, human kindness. As word of Robertson's community initiative spread, other dealerships began to take notice. What had started as a story about an undercover boss had evolved into something much more significant, a complete reimagining of what a business could mean to its community. And winter, with all its challenges, had only just begun. Spring brought unexpected publicity to Robertson's luxury motors, but not for the reasons anyone anticipated. A famous lifestyle magazine had sent a photographer to capture their community initiatives, but what she discovered instead became the talk of the automotive industry. The photographer arrived early one morning, hoping to catch the golden hour light on the showroom's vehicles. Instead, she witnessed Andy and his team gathering in what they called the Dream Room, a space that had once been a dusty file storage area but was now transformed into something extraordinary. The walls were covered with photographs, not of cars, but of people. Each photo told a story: the food truck owner beaming beside his new luxury sedan, the farmer whose broken-down SUV had inspired their service center transformation, the family they'd sheltered during the winter storm. Beneath each photo was a handwritten note describing not just what they bought, but their journey to that moment. "This is our real showroom," Andy explained when he noticed the photographer's interest. "Cars are beautiful, but it's the people behind them that matter." He showed her a leather-bound book where they kept detailed notes about their customers' dreams, achievements, and life milestones. The photographer abandoned her original story angle. Instead, she spent a week documenting how Robertson's had revolutionized the concept of customer relationships in the luxury car industry. She observed as staff celebrated a customer's retirement with a surprise gathering, complete with a cake decorated with a tiny fondant version of his dream car, which he was finally buying. One incident particularly caught her attention. A young woman arrived, clutching a worn envelope. She explained that her grandfather, a longtime customer, had recently passed away. In his final letter to her, he'd included a note to Robertson's staff, thanking them for years of friendship that went far beyond business transactions. The staff's genuine emotional response to the letter, gathering around the young woman, sharing stories about her grandfather, showing her his photo on their wall, demonstrated that Robertson's had become more than a dealership. It had become a community hub where life's moments, big and small, were celebrated. News of the Dream Room spread quickly through social media after the magazine article was published. Other dealerships tried to replicate it, but as Mr. Thompson explained to a group of visiting executives, you can't fake genuine connections. Our wall isn't a marketing strategy, it's our family album. The Dream Room concept sparked something even more significant. Customers began sharing their own stories on social media, using the hashtag #RobertsonStory. Each post revealed how the dealership had touched their lives beyond just selling them a car. One post came from a teenager who'd been inspired by their service center's transparent operations. She wrote about how watching the mechanics work had motivated her to pursue a career in automotive engineering. Robertson's responded by creating a scholarship program for young people interested in the automotive industry. Another story came from a local business owner who'd lost everything in a recent economic downturn. He shared how Robertson's had helped him rebuild his fleet of delivery vehicles, creating a payment plan that considered his situation. They didn't just sell me cars, he wrote, they invested in my comeback story. The social media attention brought an unexpected challenge. People began visiting the dealership not to buy cars, but to see the Dream Room and share their own stories. Rather than seeing this as a disruption, Andy recognized another opportunity to redefine what a dealership could be. They expanded the Dream Room, adding a small cafe area where visitors could sit and write their stories. The walls became a living testament to the power of treating every customer as a person first, not just a potential sale. They installed a digital kiosk where people could record video messages about their experiences, creating a time capsule of community connections. One quiet afternoon, as Andy was adding a new photo to the wall, he overheard a conversation between two visitors. "I never thought I'd spend my Saturday hanging out at a car dealership," one said. "But this place feels more like a community center that happens to sell cars." That comment inspired another innovation. Robertson's began hosting monthly community events in their showroom. They moved the cars aside to make space for local art exhibitions, community meetings, and educational workshops. The Dream Room became a popular venue for storytelling nights, where customers and staff shared their experiences. Mr. Thompson, who had initially worried about maintaining the dealership's prestigious image, now led many of these community initiatives. "Our prestige comes from how we make people feel," he often said, "not from how exclusive we are." The photographer's article, when finally published, wasn't just about a luxury car dealership. It was about how one business had challenged the traditional model of success by prioritizing human connections over transactions. The photos showed not just the gleaming cars and modern facilities, but the genuine moments of joy, support, and community that happened daily at Robertson's. The article concluded with a powerful image, Andy sitting in the Dream Room late one evening, adding new photos to the wall. The caption read, "In an industry obsessed with horsepower and acceleration, one dealership discovered that the most valuable metric is the number of lives touched." That evening, after reading the article, Andy gathered his staff. "You know what makes these stories special?" he asked, gesturing to the walls of the Dream Room. "It's not just that we sell cars to people from all walks of life. It's that we've created a place where everyone's story matters." As the sun set over Robertson's luxury motors, casting a warm glow through the showroom windows, the Dream Room continued to fill with new stories. Each one was a testament to a simple truth, that sometimes the greatest luxury isn't found in the products we sell, but in the connections we make and the lives we touch along the way. Summer arrived with a surprising challenge for Robertson's Luxury Motors. Their success had caught the attention of a major international luxury car manufacturer, who sent representatives to evaluate the dealership. The company was interested in making Robertson's their flagship location for a new line of eco-friendly luxury vehicles, but they had concerns about the dealership's unconventional approach. The corporate team arrived in sleek suits and arrived in a fleet of identical black cars. Their lead representative, a stern-faced executive, seemed particularly puzzled by the dream room and the constant stream of community members flowing through the dealership. "Mr. Chen," he said during their initial meeting, "while your sales numbers are impressive, we're concerned that your unique approach might dilute the exclusive nature of our brand." Andy listened politely, then suggested they spend a day experiencing Robertson's from a customer's perspective. "Let's put aside the paperwork and statistics," he proposed. "I want you to see what we're really about." The day began with an unexpected encounter. A young teacher arrived with her entire fourth-grade class on a field trip. This was part of Robertson's new educational program, where they taught children about automotive engineering, safety, and environmental responsibility. The corporate team watched in amazement as mechanics demonstrated basic engine principles using interactive models, and the children's eyes lit up with curiosity. "These kids might not be customers today," Andy explained, "but we're investing in tomorrow. Some of them might become engineers, designers, or even work here someday. More importantly, they're learning that a luxury car dealership can be a place of learning and community." Later that morning, they witnessed the service center in action. A customer had brought in a competitor's luxury vehicle for repairs, something that would have been unheard of at most dealerships. Instead of turning them away, the service team welcomed them warmly. "We believe in building trust," the service manager explained to the corporate team. "When people see how we treat them, regardless of what they drive, they remember us when it's time for their next purchase." The afternoon brought another surprise. The local elderly care home had arranged for their residents to visit the dream room. Many of them shared stories about their first cars, their dream vehicles, and the memories they'd made on the road. The corporate team found themselves drawn into these conversations, forgetting their clipboards and evaluation forms. One elderly gentleman, a retired mechanic, spent an hour sharing stories about working on luxury cars in the 1960s. The corporate representatives were captivated by his detailed knowledge of their brand's history, details that even they hadn't known. During lunch, served in the community cafe, a young entrepreneur walked in. She had purchased her first luxury car from Robertson's 3 months ago, but she wasn't there for service. She'd come to mentor high school students as part of Robertson's youth business program, which used the dealership's facilities for after-school education. The corporate team's skepticism began to fade as they saw how Robertson's had transformed from a simple car dealership into a vibrant community hub. They watched as people from all walks of life interacted naturally in what should have been an intimidating luxury space. Late in the afternoon, they witnessed something that truly demonstrated Robertson's unique approach. A customer who had bought a car 2 years ago stopped by, not for service or a new purchase, but to share news about their recent promotion. The staff gathered to celebrate with them, bringing out a congratulatory card that everyone had signed. "You see," Andy explained to the corporate team, "we're not just selling cars. We're becoming part of people's life stories. When someone succeeds, we celebrate with them. When they struggle, we support them. That's what builds true brand loyalty." The corporate representatives stayed until closing time, watching as the staff prepared for an evening community event, a local arts showcase featuring work from area students. The showroom had been transformed, with cars carefully repositioned to create a gallery space. As they prepared to leave, the lead executive pulled Andy aside. "Mr. Chen, I owe you an apology," he said. "We came here worried about brand dilution, but what you've created, it's the future of luxury retail. You haven't diluted the brand, you've enhanced it by making it accessible without making it any less special." That evening, after the corporate team had left, Andy gathered his staff for their daily debrief. "They offered us the flagship dealership position," he announced, to cheers from the team. "But more importantly, they want to learn from us. They want to understand how we've built these relationships with our community." Mr. Thompson, who had been quietly observing all day, spoke up. "You know what really convinced them? It wasn't our sales figures or our service records. It was watching that elderly gentleman share his stories in the dream room. They saw how we've made luxury approachable without making it any less luxurious." As the staff celebrated, Andy slipped away to the dream room. He added a new photo to the wall, one taken that day of the fourth graders learning about engines, their faces bright with excitement. Below it, he wrote, "Luxury isn't about exclusivity. It's about creating moments that make everyone feel extraordinary." The sun was setting over Robertson's luxury motors, casting long shadows through the showroom windows. The cars gleamed under the evening light, but they weren't the main attraction. The real luxury on display was the warmth, community, and genuine connections that had become the dealership's trademark. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but for now, Andy sat in the dream room, surrounded by the stories of lives touched and dreams realized, knowing that they had created something far more valuable than just another luxury car dealership. They had created a place where luxury meant belonging, where success was measured in smiles as well as sales, and where every person's story was worth celebrating. 1 year to the day after Andy first walked into Robertson's luxury motors wearing his worn jeans, the dealership prepared for its biggest celebration yet. The staff had planned a special anniversary event, but they'd kept the details secret from Andy. The morning began unusually quiet. When Andy arrived, the showroom lights were dim, and the parking lot was empty. Confused, he used his key to enter, only to be met with complete darkness. Suddenly, the lights blazed on, and hundreds of voices shouted, "Surprise!" The showroom had been transformed. Every car had been moved to create a massive gathering space, and the walls were covered with photos from the past year, candid shots of staff members helping customers, community events, and countless moments that had defined their journey. At the center stood Mr. Thompson, looking considerably more relaxed in jeans and a casual shirt, a sight that would have been unthinkable a year ago. "Sir," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "we wanted to show you what you've helped us create." The gathering included not just current staff, but customers who had become part of the Robertsons family over the past year. The food truck owner who'd bought their premium sedan was there, serving gourmet breakfast from his truck in the parking lot. The farmer whose broken-down SUV had inspired their service center transformation had brought fresh produce for everyone. Local news crews arrived to cover the event, but what caught their attention wasn't the celebration itself, it was the stories people shared. One by one, individuals stood up to speak about how Robertsons had impacted their lives. A young mechanic spoke about how the dealership had sponsored her through technical school after discovering her passion for cars during a community event. A retired teacher shared how the Dream Room had become a place where he could share his love of automotive history with young people. The elderly care home residents who regularly visited had prepared a special presentation, a handmade quilt featuring patches representing different moments in Robertson's transformation. Each patch told a story: the winter storm shelter, the student workshops, the community celebrations. Mid-morning brought another surprise. The corporate team from the luxury manufacturer returned, this time with a special announcement. Inspired by Robertson's success, they were launching a nationwide community integration program, with Andy and his team serving as consultants to help other dealerships rebuild their relationships with their communities. But the most moving moment came when Mr. Thompson unveiled the newest addition to the Dream Room, a wall dedicated to "the day everything changed." It featured the security camera photo from the day Andy first walked in, placed alongside pictures of other customers who had initially been judged by their appearance but had become valued members of the Robertsons family. A year ago, Mr. Thompson addressed the crowd, I made the biggest mistake of my career by judging someone by their clothes. But that mistake led to the most important lesson we've ever learned, that true luxury isn't about exclusivity, it's about inclusivity. Andy, usually composed, found himself overwhelmed by the outpouring of emotion. Looking around the room, he saw not just a successful business, but a community that had come together to redefine what a luxury car dealership could be. The celebration continued throughout the day, with people coming and going, sharing stories and memories. The local coffee shop that supplied their customer lounge had created a special Robertson's blend for the occasion. Children ran around the showroom, their laughter mixing with the conversations of adults. Late in the afternoon, something extraordinary happened. A young person walked in, wearing worn jeans and a simple t-shirt, looking nervous but determined. The staff exchanged knowing looks, remembering a similar scene from a year ago. But this time, everyone in the showroom, staff and customers alike, moved to welcome them. DY watched from the dream room as the newcomer was offered coffee, engaged in conversation, and made to feel at home. No judgments, no assumptions, just genuine welcome and respect. The transformation was complete. As the day drew to a close, Andy gathered everyone for one final announcement. "When I bought this dealership," he said, "I had a vision of changing how we sell cars. But you've all created something far more valuable. You've shown that a business can be both successful and compassionate, exclusive and inclusive, prestigious and welcoming." He unveiled plans for the next year, expanding their education programs, creating a foundation to support community initiatives, and launching an apprenticeship program for aspiring automotive professionals from underprivileged backgrounds. The sun was setting as the last guests departed, casting a warm glow through the showroom windows. The staff gathered for their traditional end-of-day meeting, but instead of discussing sales figures, they shared their favorite moments from the past year. Mr. Thompson, who had become something of a mentor to newer staff members, summed up the day perfectly. "You know, luxury used to mean keeping people out. Now it means welcoming them in." As Andy locked up that evening, he paused in the dream room, looking at the thousands of stories that now covered its walls. The room had become more than a collection of photographs, it was a testament to what happens when you choose to see the potential in every person who walks through your door. Outside, the dealership sign glowed softly in the twilight. Below it, a new tagline had been added, "Where every story matters." It was more than just a marketing phrase, it was a promise, a philosophy, and a reminder that sometimes the greatest transformations start with a simple act of respect. Robertson's Luxury Motors had become more than just a place to buy high-end cars. It had become a blueprint for how businesses could thrive by putting people first, a reminder that success isn't just measured in sales figures but in lives touched, and a proof that luxury doesn't have to mean exclusivity. As Andy walked to his car, still the same hybrid he'd driven that first day, he smiled, knowing that tomorrow would bring new stories, new challenges, and new opportunities to prove that sometimes the most luxurious thing you can offer someone is simply the chance to belong.